Join Revolution Radio every Sunday at 5 p.m. Studio B for Strange Universe. The Strange Universe.
Join Revolution Radio every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Studio B for Momentary Zen with host Zen Garcia at freedomslips.com, the People Station.
Are you a fan of rock and roll? Does it get your feet tapping and your hands clapping? Then be sure to check out Crip Rick's Rock and Roll Hour every Friday night, 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern and Standard Time on Studio B right here at revolutionradio.com, where we get down and talk all things rock.
This is the People's War. It is our war. We are the fighters. Fight it then. Fight it with all that is in us. And may God defend the right.
Warning! Warning!
We gotta stop them! They're gonna kill us all! See how the trouble you've started? Be they the government, be they industry, be they organized labor, be they anyone, or human beings. Time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even possibly take part. And you've got to put your mind upon the gears, upon the wheels, upon the levers, all the apparatus to make it stop. That's it. Go run it. Go on it. Go left.
Radio at freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported talk radio station, throwing ourselves upon the gears of the machine. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
You called down the thunder, well now you got it. Right, you tell them I'm coming, and hell's coming with me, you hear? Hell's coming with me.
Revolution Radio.
The spice extends life. The spice expands consciousness. The spice is vital to space travel.
Greetings, Earth Explorers. Welcome to X Squared Radio. I'm your host, Brooks Agnew, coming to you live from an undisclosed location east of the Appalachian Mountains. This is where the past meets the future. And in here, the results are always positive. We might go a little past your imagination, but have no fear. You will be safely traveling with us as we endeavor to treat, cure, and prevent the disease of ignorance. This is the voice of the revolution. And we are streaming to you live from Revolution Radio on freedomslips.org, the #1 listener-supported network in the entire country. We're also streaming to you live on several video platforms on X and Rumble and YouTube, Twitch, DLive, Foxhole, and Truth Refugee, everywhere where good podcasting can be found, live and free. And our chat room is already filling up. I think Deborah Pollard was the first one in tonight. And I'm having a little problem with my mouse scrolling wheel. Anybody ever had that before? You like scroll and it lags and then continues on way after you stop using it. And Norma Coast is here. Mona Hawk, yes, I will answer your question. Monty6223 is here. Jim Rottle's here. Dave's Waffle House is here. I ate at Waffle House this week. JJ Nevada Titanium 4K is here. Stanley Mays, Gramanon, Bayonet. Yeah, this is going to be a good program tonight. Who's on pill tonight? Over on Foxhole. Who do we have? See, I'm still having trouble with my mouse scrolling, not by the wheel. It just does it on its own. I think I'm going to have to take a sledgehammer to my mouse and replace it. I wear mices out. Yes, there is. It is mices. Norma Coast is here. So Mona asked me a question if I was going to start carrying antibiotics since the pharmacy in Canada finally got squeezed out. I have bought the supplier. So I'm going to start offering amoxicillin, zithromycin, or Zithromax. And I think it's what is it? Cephalex, something like that. Anyway, 3 antibiotics. I've had lots of requests for it. Watch for it. I'm going to put it on the website next week, and we will have it in stock within 20 days. So I don't expect a lot of orders for it, but here's the deal. We have this deadly bacteria that seems to be making its rounds up and down the East Coast. And we've had, bacteria-borne lettuce coming out of Mexico. And see, ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, they won't help you with those things. You need an antibiotic. I caution you against, there it is, cephalexin. Thank you very much. The question about all things happening all at once. Yeah. Well, I find that kind of strange as well. We had the Democrats shut down for 9 weeks. Then we had India Post is offline now for another couple of weeks. That's crazy. Can't get anything shipped through India Post again. And then we had the U.S.-India tariff not settling. We had a 25% tariff on all their stuff. Then we dropped that tariff, and now we have an 18% reciprocal tariff. And that hasn't settled yet. So we have about 1,000 boxes of product sitting in New York at U.S. Customs, and they're waiting for the tariff to settle. Once it settles, all that stuff's going to hit the USPS, and it's going to show up on our doorstep, and we'll be back to our 4-day delivery schedule. But that's a good question, Mona. Why is everything happening all at once? It's like election time. We have to shut down the middle class. We just got a report that more adult men are leaving the workforce in the United States. What is up with that? Why are you leaving the workforce? There's plenty of work out there. Everywhere I go in town, there are help wanted signs. Last week, I wanted to get the exhaust system put on the RX-7, the race car we're building. So I called up our local guy that we usually go to. Sorry, I'm going on vacation for a week. I'm not going to be back for at least a week. So I called my backup. Well, we don't have a pipe bender, not a machine, a person who bends pipe. We don't have one right now. We're trying to find one, but we don't have one. So I called a third place, and they said, no, we're short on labor right now. We can't take on the job. We're doing other things, but we're not doing exhaust systems. So I finally went to Meineke in another town, and Meineke had the right guy. They had enough pipe. They had to order the mufflers, but everything else was in stock. So I paid a little bit more, and I got the exhaust system on the RX-7. It all looks very slick. It's going to sound awesome, and it's going to run like a scalded cat. You ever seen a scalded cat run? Well, that's how this car is going to run. So that's the issue. Can't find labor. Can't find workers anywhere. I needed some drywall hung and finished. Shopped for a week. Found 2 guys willing to do it. Guess what they charged? No, you would never guess. Normally we pay between $25 and $35 a board to have it hung and finished. I provide the board. I provide the mud and the tape and everything. They just provide the labor. $140 a board to hang and finish. And it took 3 days, and I had to sand myself out of a mess. They were not very good mudders. But it's all I could find. It's all I could find. Yeah, well, when it comes to coast, we used to talk about the quickening. Everything seems to be accelerating. And then it kind of slowed down again. So, and I reckon it's going to do that too after the election. I think they're just trying to make things worse than they really are. Thank God we got out of the mess with Hong running in the primary for governor. Not that she would have won, but holy crap, people. Will you quit voting for communists? It's just making me sick. Wake up. Wake up, Democrats. Your party is being stolen from you. All right, let's talk about the Northwest Passage. I know everybody wants to talk about the Northwest Passage. Not. But I like talking about it because it's something that strategically we are planning for. That's why we are so interested in Greenland. Greenland is to the north of the Northwest Passage and the 10 provinces of Canada, which you can't even name them all. I mean, you can name the big ones, but not the ones up against the Northwest Passage. Of Canada, they're the shorelines of the Northwest Passage. Why is it so important? Well, because the Panama Canal is a little bit of a choke point. You know, you can only get so many boats through there anyway. The Chinese run the thing, so that is a risk as well, especially for military ships going through there. I mean, they scan the crap out of them the whole time they're there. So the issue is that the Northwest Passage is actually a nice place to sail most of the year to, you know, go from the west coast of the United States over to Europe. Now, normally you have to go through the canal, which is a pain in the butt. It adds anywhere from 7 to 11 days to the journey. But the issue is, of course, that the Northwest Passage is not secure. We don't control it. We don't have surveillance. We don't have presence there. So that's why we want Greenland. One of the reasons. The other reason is that Greenland sits up against the Arctic Circle, which makes it a dandy defensive position to prevent missiles from coming over the pole the short way from either Russia or Europe or the Middle East and striking America. They're not going to come the long way over the Atlantic. That's dumb. They're going to go over the pole and come down that way. So, sorry, been a long day. Greenland sits in the pathway and would make an excellent place to put part of the Golden Dome. another reason we're interested in Greenland. The issue, of course, is that Norway has governing power over Greenland. And Norway, last time I checked the globe, it's in Europe. It's not the Western Hemisphere, right? It's not the Western Hemisphere. And so the Trump doctrine, a la the Monroe Doctrine, is that we control the Western Hemisphere. That's it. The Eastern Hemisphere, you can stay out of our backyard. So there hasn't been a lot in the news lately, but trust me, there is a lot of progress being made on the issue of making Greenland one of our presence in the Western Hemisphere so that we can secure the Northwest Passage. Otherwise, Russians and Chinese and who knows, Houthis, North Koreans, whoever can just sail through there, and it's just a short cruise missile over Canada to get to here, and who's going to tell? Nobody. So watch for that. Watch for that to happen. The Chinese shipping company called Sea Legend, I don't know what it is in Chinese, but that's what it translates to, Sea Legend, they're reportedly opening an ice Silk Road instead of, overland. And this shipping lane is going to go through the Arctic to avoid the Middle East and the choke points like the Strait of Hormuz. So when the weekly service begins, Sea Legend, now this is not a big ship, and it is an ice-rated hull, not an icebreaker hull. It's not a big container ship like a mega container ship. This is maybe can carry 60 containers, which is not really that economically effective. But the Sea Legend is going to be the first company to offer regular container shipping through the Arctic. And this should be concerning to everybody because the Chinese don't just move freight on these boats. They also surveil from these boats. Anyway, the Financial Times, of all places, is where I got the story, reported Monday that the Sea Legend's route is going to skirt the North Russia coast on its journey between Ningbo on China's east coast and Felixstowe in the UK. The voyage will cut the usual 40-day sailing time between the two ports by about half. Now that is economically feasible. And of course, it depends on the conditions in the Arctic Circle, but from about May to the end of September, it's navigable. There are icebergs, but it's navigable. The move follows a record 23 transits through the Northern Sea route last summer, up from 15 voyages in 2024. The Arctic passage is relatively difficult and expensive, and of course it becomes even more so during winter's heavy ice conditions. But unrest in the Middle East has made traditional shipping routes through the Persian Gulf and Red Sea unreliable. Iran is attacking international shipping in the Strait of Hormuz, which links the Persian Gulf with the Gulf of Oman, while Iran's terrorist proxy in Yemen, the Houthis, does the same in the Red Sea. Iran and the Houthis have proposed schemes to extort ransoms from ships using the two major regional checkpoints, the Strait of Hormuz and Bab el-Mandeb Strait. Both Iran and the Houthis have suggested their patrons in China, the leading power in the emerging axis of tyranny, we call them, would receive discounts or waivers from these ransom demands, but the Chinese do not seem inclined to trust their Islamic extremist clients. I wonder why. Like they would do anything they're told. The Arctic route would theoretically put shipping at the mercy of the Russians, who control the routes China wants to use, but the Russians make for less, unpredictable partners. It's as long as you don't step on their toes, they won't step on yours. The other major factor that has kept worldwide shipping companies from making heavier use of the Arctic is, of course, the environmental concerns. which weigh much more heavily on on European minds than China's. Environmentalists are worried about oil spills and climate change, although on the latter point, shipping experts have noted that using the shorter Arctic route would mean lower carbon emissions from massive cargo ships by taking them off the water half the time compared to the traditional route. They also noted that demand for icebreaker vessels has reached the highest level in over a decade, suggesting a variety of shipping interests are taking a fresh look at the Arctic route, even though it is surprisingly high rate of it, navigational problems and mechanical failures due to the extremely cold climate. The Russians are the world leaders in this kind of shipping. Murmansk, which is spelled Murmansk, you would pronounce it Murmansk, but Russians pronounce it Murmansk. Shipping company is the largest fleet of icebreakers, nuclear-powered icebreakers on the planet. We plan on chartering one of these ships for the North Pole Inner Earth expedition. It ain't cheap, put it that way. Anyway, this polar Silk Road concept did not originate with Sea Legend's marketing department. No. It first appeared, I believe, was it 2014? Maybe 2017. I'm timing this with when I was in manufacturing. In the name of ambitious plan for exploiting the Arctic's resources, including shipping lanes that would be to tie into China's Belt and Road Initiative, which is suffering right now. The BRI was originally built as an effort to rebuild the fabled Silk Road trade route of antiquity. It isn't going as well as they thought it was going to go. Too much conflict, too many pirates. The polar Silk Road flourished in the imaginations of Chinese planners after Chinese ships demonstrated the ability to navigate the largest polar sea routes. China does not have any border territory in the Arctic, a problem that is always likely to be solved by working with Russia. The best they can do is sail out of Shanghai. Interestingly, China's early interest in polar transit was driven by the desire to reduce Beijing's dependency on a strategic choke point. But it was not the Strait of Hormuz or Bab el-Mandeb that worried the Chinese. It was 2017. It was the Strait of Malacca, which is bordered by Indonesia, Malaysia, and Singapore. During World War II, this was a real hotbed. It changed hands, I think, 5 times during the war. The British, the Americans, the Chinese, the Japanese. It was crazy how many people, because it was so strategic during the war. And believe me, it had the shit bombed out of it from the air, from the sea. They just hammered it all the time because they kind of figured, the Japanese, if we can't have it, nobody can. And it just got torn up. In fact, it was so bad. This area, Singapore, Malaysia, was so beat up during World War II, bombed and starved out for supply chain and disease, and it was just crazy. After the war, when Malaysia started to rebuild, they just carved off Singapore. They just wrote it off. It was so bad. Singapore was so devastated. Worse than Gaza, if you can believe it. Worse than Gaza. Because you're talking about, tropical areas. The mosquitoes would kill you, if anything else. But look what happened. The people of Singapore rallied, and look at Singapore today. You would never know it today compared to 50 years ago. It was crazy, the work that these people did to bring their country back from that hell that it was. But this choke point is exactly what we're talking about. It's why China wanted to avoid that. This Arctic route, even though it has its downside, not the least of which is we can't take big ships. We have to take a lot of little ones. It's worth it because there's nobody up there going to shoot at you. if you put something on a boat, there's a 99% chance it's going to get to its destination. It's kind of like dropping something in the mail. You know, you drop a money order to your college kid in the mail, and of course, you don't have to do that anymore, but you're pretty sure it's going to get there. You know, nobody's going to rob the bank or rob the stagecoach. Documents from Chinese government planning sessions made it clear Beijing never gave up on its ambitions for the Arctic, and the growing risks and costs using Middle Eastern trade routes could be making the heavy investments needed to exploit Arctic trade routes and make them look reasonable for investment. So this is the world we live in, people. It's a risk people are willing to take. All right, little sip here. Yeah, I believe it, John Borden. The world is sick, but also the world is very well. I mean, there's a lot of things happening that are good. We worry about the stock market. We worry about the price of gold. We worry about credit and cash flow and everything like that. But by and large, business in America is doing pretty well. It's making money. If you look at the stock market, less today than I would say 10 years or even 20 years ago, less today, businesses are not so dependent upon the price of their shares to stay in business because they're making money. Because even if they can't borrow money based on the price of their shares, if their shares were to go down, the companies are profitable. They're making money. And that means that they can weather a slight dip in the price of their shares. So, you know, a lot of people are worried about a stock market crash. But, you know, even in 1929, when the stock market crashed in 1929, oh, it was bad. People jumped out of buildings. People lost their fortunes, their savings, all that stuff. But, you know, by 1930, or I'd say the spring of 31, the stock market was already coming back. It was already coming back. It wasn't until Roosevelt crashed the bond market in 33. That had nothing to do with Hoover. Absolutely nothing to do with Hoover. Of course, it was easy for Roosevelt to say, oh, that damn Republican Hoover, you know, he messed everything up. He did make it more difficult, but it was the bond market crash of 33. This is what happens when a bond inversion happens. And we're there right now. A bond inversion is where the long-term bonds yield less than the short-term bonds. You understand what I mean? Like, okay, so if you go to the bank and you say, I have $10,000 and I want to put it in a CD, I want to earn some interest. And the bank will say, well, okay, we have a 1-year CD and we have a 5-year CD. If you put your money, this $10,000 in a 5-year CD, which means you're not going to touch it for 5 years, we will give you, I don't know, what is it they pay now? 4.5%, let's say, 4.5%. If it's 1 year, we give you 2.5%. You understand what I'm saying? The short-term bonds always yield less. Why? Well, because the risk is less. The risk is less. So a bond inversion is when the long-term bonds yield less than the short-term bonds. That's a bond inversion. Typically what happens is banks, which are usually the holders of the bonds, or sometimes municipalities, like they'll issue an industrial revenue bond to expand their utility or to build a sports facility or something like that. They'll issue a 10-year bond. And basically what they're doing is they're selling paper to the public or to investors. So the public buys into that bond. saying, okay, it's a 10-year bond. I'm going to put my money into it, and I'm going to make 2.5 times my money in 10 years. That's pretty good, right? But your money's tied up for 10 years, right? You're going to make 2.5 times your money in 10 years. But suppose somebody came along and said, well, we're doing a 2-year bond and you can make 5% a year on your money, or 6% a year, or 8% a year. Well, hell, I only have to tie my money up for 2 years. That's not too bad. I'll do that. And what happens is the holder of the long-term bond tries to unload the bond. They try to sell the bond. And guess what happens? Yeah, that's exactly right. They have to take a haircut. They got to sell that bond for less money. Now, yes, you get some of your money back, but you're not going to get the earnings that you thought you were going to get. What you're going to take is a small ass whooping, but at least you're going to have some of your money back in your pocket. Today's money is worth a lot more money than tomorrow's money. Trust me, it is. And, you know, when things are volatile like they are and deals come and go, right, today's money is worth even more. We're there right now. And there is a ratio. I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but there is a ratio of this difference between the long and the short-term bonds that tends to precipitate depressions like happened in 1933. And we didn't recover from it, people, till 1953. 20 freaking years. 20 years we were in that hole because of Roosevelt. Yeah, it was crazy, wasn't it? So that's where we are relative to that. I think that, well, we had some issues. There was a bank in California, you'll recall, that had a bunch of depositors that had, I don't know, 20 million, 25 million, 125 million in their checking account. Not kidding now. They're not earning any interest because there was really no interest to pay, right? Who was paying interest back then? But can you imagine having $125 million in your checking account, not even diversifying it? And what happened was the bank had a lot of long-term bonds they were holding on to. And there was a bond inversion just like there is now. And the bank very quietly, without advertising, very quietly started selling off the long-term bonds. Now, they didn't get too far. They didn't get like 90% of them sold, but there was a good portion of them sold. And what happened was somebody that had one of those big-ass checking accounts with $100 million in it got wind that the bank was selling long-term bonds at a discount. And they said, I think this bank's going to go under. And I don't want them to do, a bail-in and take my money like they did in Cyprus and Sicily 2 different times. So they moved their money. They wrote a check and they moved their money to another bank. And then their friends did it. And then their friends did it. And the next thing you know, like $1.5 billion left the bank from depositors who didn't want to be there when the bank went down. Well, of course, what happened is the bank went down because all the depositors left, based on a rumor, but it was a pretty solid rumor. And you recall that's when Janet Yellen stepped in, because normally when that happens to a bank, it's just too bad, so sad. The people that got their money out, oh, well, you guys did really well. And the people that had their money in the bank, when they closed the doors, it's not FDIC insured above $120,000. But if you have $25 million in your checking account, you're pretty much hosed, right? Janet Yellen stepped in and made everybody whole. Was it legal? Probably not. But you got to understand, these are the donors to the Democrat Party. So they had to take care of them, and they did. And that's what happened. You may have missed that story, but that's how that bank went under. Let's talk a little bit about consciousness. Scientifically speaking, for a long time. I'd say the better part of 50 years that I know of. I read a book called Parapsychology, The Forgotten Science. Actually, very good book about a lot of clinical studies that were done on consciousness and ESP and memory and intelligence in the 50s. So we're talking, 70 years ago. Neuroscientists have searched the brain for the biological basis of consciousness. We were discussing this just the other day on Awake Nation. If you don't watch Awake Nation, you should. It's on at 9 o'clock in the morning every morning. And it's with Penny L.A. Shepherd. And I have the link on my website. You can go to brooksagnew.com and you can click on the Wake Nation link and you can watch it. And there are lots of archives there. And I'm a regular on there. And we were discussing consciousness. But neuroscientists approach this from a different point. They assume our thoughts and our emotions and the subjective experiences emerge from networks of neurons, that it's biochemical. But what if that assumption is maybe not wrong, but what if it's incomplete? You believe that, I believe that, but what does science say? That's the provocative question explored by neuroscientist Christoph Koch of the Allen Institute in Seattle. Now, Koch recently presented his challenges to our understanding of consciousness at the Bial Foundation's, or you can call it BIAL, but I think Bial, B-I-A-L, Bial Foundation's Behind and Beyond the Brain Symposium in Porto, Portugal, in April of this year. Building on a body of published work that includes a 2016 paper that we're reviewing right now. So Koch explained to Science Alert, which is where I get my stories, that it may be time to rethink one of neuroscience's deepest assumptions, that consciousness is something the brain produces. There are guys, on the panel that still believe that. I just don't believe that, because I think the brain is only part of the gray matter that exists in the human body. Not everybody has the same capability of brain, and yet they may have incredible consciousness. Koch does not dispute the brain's essential role in conscious experience, but decades of research have shown that injuries, disease, anesthesia, electrical stimulation can profoundly alter or even eliminate awareness, even self-awareness. Instead, he asks a different question, and I think this is very profound. Does the brain create consciousness, or could it be shaping something more fundamental? Despite remarkable progress in understanding how the brain processes information, neuroscience still faces a profound mystery. Scientists can increasingly identify neural circuits involved in perception, in memory, in emotion, decision-making. All those can be tracked. But those discoveries still can't explain why physical brain activity is accompanied by subjective experience. As Koch writes in a new, as yet unpublished essay shared here, nothing in science explains how 3 pounds of matter, a piece of furniture in the universe like any other, subjects to the same natural laws, can love, hate, dream, imagine, fear, or hope for its future. These are absolutely behaviors of consciousness. It isn't the first time Koch has grappled publicly with this puzzle. In 2023, he conceded a 25-year bet with philosopher James Chalmers, admitting neuroscience was no closer to pinning down consciousness's neural mechanism than when he made the wager in 1998. To address that question, Koch turns to a philosophical framework known as analytic idealism, which proposes that consciousness may be a fundamental feature of reality rather than something generated by the brain. Now, the question, of course, is, we being we believe, the only creatures on the face of the earth that can perceive time, what is reality? What is reality? I mean, two people can be in a room at the same time. One is madly in love with the other person who he's dancing with or she's dancing with, and the other one's looking at his watch. They're both doing the same thing. They're both in reality, but their perception of that reality is completely different. So which one is real? That's where the root word comes from, real, reality. You see, the reality is in the perceiver. Now, there is an average reality, like we're standing on a floor, we're in a room, you're wearing clothes, I'm wearing clothes, we drove a car here, I have a job, you have a job. There's an average reality that we all kind of accept, right? In fact, we must agree on that average reality, by and large, trees and mountains and ocean and sky and earth by itself. But other than that, after you get out of the bell curve of reality, we're right here in the top of the bell curve. Once you get to the tails of the average reality, you have quite a different perception. The people on the bottom of the curve, are different than the people at the top of the curve. The people at the top of the curve believe maybe we live in the best of all possible worlds. And the people at the bottom of the curve fear that's true. You understand? Reality is what we make it. Now, yes, you can deceive yourself, but first of all, you have to be aware of yourself, which is a remarkable thing, just to think by itself that you are self-aware. And there are levels of that. Just because you say, well, I have pain, therefore I know I live, right? That's one way of looking at it. I'm hungry, I'm horny, I have lust, I have fear. Those basic emotions, we can say, yes, I'm alive, I exist, I'm self-aware. But to be able to be aware that you're aware, in other words, observing your thinking process from outside the thinking process is called meta-intelligence. Only a very small number of people can even do that. 2, maybe 2.5% of the people. You got INFJs. INFJs are introverted, intuitive, and they're feeling and judging. That's the INFJ. They make up 0.2%. 0.2% of the psychological population. What makes them so special is that they can notice tiny, almost imperceptible nuances in tone, in purpose, in musculature, facial expressions, body language. They're aware of all of it. Even on the phone, they can tell if someone's lying. They can tell if someone's holding something back. They can tell if somebody's being disingenuous or trying to sell them on an idea. It's not from the words. It isn't. It's from the other frequencies that go with it. They're aware of all of this. And it's frustrating to talk to an INFJ because you can't get anything over on them. I mean, yes, they can be gullible because they're hopeful, wishful people, but because they are, after all, feeling people, they're not judging by logic, they're judging by feeling. But they're extremely sensitive empaths. And once they learn to master their empathy, whereas they sense the other person's feelings and thoughts, but they don't become them. Like if you find somebody that's a real empath, they crash all the time because if they're in a room full of negative energy, they have a negative reaction. If they're in a room full of, lustful people who are, looking at this person or anybody in the room with lust, they're overcome with it, you see. An empath can become damaged by just picking up on the emotions of others in the room or thoughts or intentions of other people in the room. But you must be able to shunt that off and be able to observe it but not become it. It's quite complex. But several years ago, While this neuroscientist was sitting alone on a bench, obviously self-aware and thinking about this, he recalls the boundary between himself and the world dissolving, describing the experience as a timeless and universal reality. In his essay, Cook describes the experience as the most meaningful of my life, writing that it tipped my view of reality. What he was sensing was the average reality was being supported by the belief systems, or should I say, the agreement systems of the people around him. And all he had to do was disagree with that reality, and reality began to dissolve right before him. Now, he's careful not to present the experience as scientific evidence, even though it is a direct observation. It's not reliable, it's not repeatable. Nobody else can do it, you understand. Instead, he writes that it gave him a view of mind at large and prompted him to re-examine the metaphysical assumptions that had guided much of his scientific career, making alternative philosophical perspectives more serious. He also acknowledged that such experiences are inherently subjective. It's difficult to make them objective. In other words, there's no Boolean binary way to carve this up and make it quantitative, right? So subjective things are rarely quantitative. They're qualitative, but not quantitative. Like, it's hot in here. What does that mean? I mean, it's hot. Is it 90? Is it 100? You see the difference between qualitative, it's hot, and quantitative, it's 85 degrees. That's the difference in the observation. In his essay, he points to developments in modern physics as another reminder that some of science's deepest assumptions have already been revised. Things that we thought were true 5 years ago are not true today. He does not argue that quantum physics explains consciousness. Rather, he suggests that the history of physics shows scientists have repeatedly been forced to rethink the nature of reality when new evidence emerged. We have to. Now, it's difficult to get it past the PhDs because they already got their PhD based on that reality. Well, I'm sorry, we're in a new reality now, and that PhD is not applicable. It's, you become a high priest of something, and then your religion becomes heresy. That's basically what we're talking about here. Cook argues that our understanding of reality must be rebuilt on a simpler foundation, compatible with both the objective outcome of empirical science as well as with subjective experience. But that's hard to do. That's hard to do, even if you go piece by piece and put the subjective and the empirical in one column and the other. When you circle back around to stand on that foundation of evidence, it falls apart. The ideas also have implications for artificial intelligence. And this emphasizes my point that I'm trying to make. Every single time it is visited, it is different because you have more experience. And each time you have more experience, you have a different perspective. I never fell in love, and then I fell in love, and now I have a different perspective of women. I never skydived, and now I have, and now I have a different perspective of weather. It's experience changes our observation point, and our observation point is the springboard from which we affect the universe. Our observation affects the universe. Matter, time, space, emotion, everything is affected by our observation. And our point of observation changes each time we gain more experience, which can come with age. Wisdom is supposed to come with age, but it doesn't really. Wisdom comes from falling down. Wisdom comes from crashing. Wisdom comes from stubbing your toe, skinning your knee, bumping your head. That's where wisdom comes from. If consciousness is not simply the product of increasingly complex computation, and I challenge you to make the computations faster than artificial intelligence, the path toward conscious machines it's going to be way more complicated than simply building increasingly powerful AI systems. And I mentioned 3 of the points right there. What about falling in love and getting hurt? What about, running with scissors? What about crashing a car or a motorcycle? What about fear? AI doesn't have those things. It doesn't have a panic attack in the middle of the night, which now gives you more perspective over, my God, I can't believe how far in debt I am. I've got to pay some of this off. I don't even know how I'm going to make my payments if something goes wrong. AI doesn't think about those things, right? It can't. It doesn't have wisdom. It doesn't have the experience to have wisdom. So it's never going to be a sentient, conscious being. And that doesn't mean future AI systems could never become conscious. They probably can, but it's going to be antiseptic. Rather, he argues that the debate cannot be settled simply by making computers more intelligent or more computationally sophisticated. And by intelligent, that just means from this point of view, or from in this understanding, that it can solve problems, right? You have an unknown, and you're going to go from the known to the unknown. That usually takes human judgment, but AI could do it. I'm not taking that away from them. But does it get joy from doing it? Is it afraid to do it? Is it willing to take a risk, knowing a downside? No, it doesn't have any of those things. So conscious is, I'm afraid it's cloistered. I mean, it is cloistered. A cloister. A cloister was a medieval arrangement of buildings in a circle, okay? So that everybody on the inside was protected from the outside. You couldn't see it, you couldn't hear it. It was like a fort, with walls, but except it was buildings. And the center area was called the cloister. So monks used to live their lives in the cloister. And of course, they would take a vow of poverty and celibacy and all of that, right? But Jesus and many religious philosophers after him called it a cloistered virtue. Yes, okay, you're a virgin your entire life, yes, but it's a cloistered virtue. In other words, you're sealed off from temptation. You're sealed off from women. It's kind of like, Islam. Islam is full of gay men. Most of the men are homosexuals and child abusers and women haters. And because they only hang together and they create societies where only they are together, they are able to keep themselves on the straight and Sharia narrow path. But as soon as they get out, they have to rape. They're driven to rape. They're driven to steal and to kill. Why? Because it's a cloistered virtue. Same as AI. AI is a cloistered consciousness. The most important task for the future is to take these insights and translate them into empirically testable hypotheses. Because if we don't test the hypotheses, we don't run experiments on the hypotheses to try to disprove them, then they're worthless. They will never become theories, never become postulates or axioms. He argues that consciousness remains one of science's greatest unsolved mysteries, and that understanding it may require researchers to think long-held assumptions or rethink long-held assumptions about relationship between mind, brain, and reality. Or you could just watch my presentation called The Body and the Soul. It answers all of these questions for you. Speaking of that, and not too far off of that, AOC has made I guess it was a TikTok video or an Instagram video, saying she's now beginning the process to freeze her eggs. Because, she's in her late 20s. She doesn't want to have a kid right now. She doesn't want to get married. She's fat. She's ambitious, she's a multimillionaire, and she wants to increase her political power. I'm sorry, but a kid just gets in the way of that right now. Doesn't mean I don't want to have a kid, but I do know as I get older, the eggs age, and I want to have a healthy child. And of course, what she's not thinking of is that IVF, this in vitro fertilization, is only successful in women over the age of 30, 3% of the time. 3%. She would do better to create a fetus, or a zygote, we would call it, and implant it in a suitable surrogate mother who's in her teens or 20s, 18, 19, 22 years old, something like that. And let that human carry that baby to term and give birth to it. That would preserve whatever figure AOC is thinking that she wants to preserve. And it would give her an extra 9 months to build her political awareness. Now, I have to say that this greed, this lust for power, exceeds everything, and even motherhood. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez announced that she had decided to start freezing her eggs, explaining that it was a choice she was making to feel more in control of her life. Like motherhood is out of control, right? You don't believe me? Try being a mother. In a series of Instagram stories, Ocasio-Cortez shared that she felt empowered to make this choice. She's 36, also spoke about how she has been asked about a potential 2028 presidential run, pointing out that a lot of lawmakers approach these considerations or these decisions through the larger context of their lives. Well, not people, but men. Men, because men can't get pregnant. I know, it just got me kicked off YouTube. What can I say? This is a choice that I'm making to feel more control of my life, and if people want to make assumptions about my decision, then let them make those assumptions. I feel empowered to make this choice. It's a new word. It's a new word she's got, and I applaud her for using it. Ocasio-Cortez, who was engaged to her fiance Riley Roberts, who at best looks like a geek. At worst, he's probably gay, ran her ad campaigns and scraped 15% of the money off the top and pumped it into their relationship, which is why she was able to afford an apartment in Washington. Of course, she's taking hormone shots, which is probably going to make her, I don't know. I hope she's not taking testosterone. She's not, but she's probably taking, there are two female hormones. There's progesterone and there's estrogen. Both of them can have wild effects on women. And one of the things that happens is you gain weight uncontrollably, which is what has happened to her. She's put on about 45 pounds and she looks it. Several people, such as conservative commentator Matt Walsh, took to social media to point out that even if Ocasio-Cortez got pregnant now, it would technically be a geriatric pregnancy, and she would be even fatter, if you can imagine that. She'll turn 37 in a couple of months, although I know lots of women that had babies at 37, 38, 39, 40, and they did just fine. If she got pregnant now, it would technically be a geriatric pregnancy. Instead, she's freezing her eggs. This desire... Oh, we're having a break. Well, let's have a break, okay? So we'll be back in about 3 minutes. Don't go away, because we got a lot of interesting things to talk about. All right? We'll be right back after
You're listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. We'll be right back after this message.
Tune in to the Family Industrial Complex podcast here on Revolution Radio, Studio B, every Wednesday, 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Get fit, empowered, physically, mentally, and spiritually.
Rooster has crowed out the opening bars of a new day. You've dragged yourself out of bed. You turn on your device. You want to know what's going on in the world. But you're hungry for a topical show that serves up those breakfast headlines just that little bit differently. Do you like your early morning news the way you like your eggs over easy? Served with slathers of salsa-like sass? Do you like those first headlines of the day to deliver a punch as powerful as that first cup of joe? Join Mitchell Bupp at his breakfast table for Revolution in the Morning, where he will digest, dissect, and dismantle those new day's national and global news headlines with razor-sharp relish. Find Mitchell here at revolution.radio every Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday morning, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on Studio B.
I will defend myself against their tyranny. Number 3 is my radio broadcast. I'm squarely in front of the public all the time, and they all know what's going on.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence.
Hello, my name is John Wayne, and I do a broadcast here at freedomslips.com, revolution.radio, called The Unequivocal Truth, DEFCON 1.
Freedom and fear are at war.
And folks, I assure you, we are in Defense Mission 1 as we journey perilously through this paradigm that we currently reside in. And I ask that you join me every Saturday, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for The Unequivocal Truth, DEFCON 1.
We shall never surrender.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Any commercial advertising you may hear in this program is of the sole discretion and benefit of the host of whose program you are listening to. Revolution Radio does not endorse any commercial products, nor does it accept monetary compensation for on-air advertising of commercial products, nor will it ever. We are and shall remain 100% listener supported. Any product advertising on this program are considered used at higher risk, and Revolution Radio shall not be held liable for any claims or damages received from any product advertised within this program. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Thanks for hanging in there while we took that short break. Now back to America Free Radio with host Brooks Agnew here at Revolution Radio.
Thank you, Revolution Radio, for that great station identification. We appreciate you so much. We'd be nowhere without Revolution Radio listeners. They're out there listening on iHeartRadio and TuneIn and Orange. And I think now they're on Spotify as well. So a lot going on out there. People driving around, listening to us while they're driving or while they're working on their favorite project. We love you. We love having you here as part of the program. If you're listening by audio, pay close attention because we are going to go to my website, which is brooksagnew.com. It's very easy if you're watching by video, because all we're going to do is click on this button right here, and that's going to take us directly there. You'll know you're there because it says, I'm Brooks Agnew. There's my picture. It doesn't get any simpler than that. In fact, if you scroll down just a little bit, you see how latent my rolling is on my mouse? You're going to see two blue buttons. The one on the right says, get my free newsletter. It doesn't get any simpler than that, people. Get the free newsletter, right? All I want is your name and email address. That's it. I don't share it with anybody, but I do send you valuable information twice a week. The other is Ivan Roxy Fenben and MeBen with no prescription. Click on that. It's going to take you to a special page inside my site called Health and Safety. Health and Safety. What are you going to find there? You're going to find what you've been looking for. You've been looking for ivermectin. You've been looking for fenbendazole. You've been looking for mebendazole, and you've been looking for ivermectin. You know what it does, or hydroxychloroquine. You know what it does. You know how you want it. Now you know where to get it. And you get it at wholesale prices, and you get it without a prescription. Now, I wanted to make you aware of something. I made a little announcement right up here. There was a Democrat shutdown for 9 weeks. That precluded everything. And then after the shutdown, there was a tariff between the U.S. and India. It was 25% on everything India ships to the U.S. They dropped it. And then they added a reciprocal tariff. That is 18% on their goods and 18% on our goods. That's what's in the works right now. That tariff is supposed to settle probably this week. That's what my agent is telling me. We have about 1,000 boxes of product sitting at U.S. Customs. I want it. Oh, believe me, I want it. I ordered it a long time ago, and it's enough to get me all the way to the end of September. That means all of you that have ordered from me would already have your orders if it wasn't for the government getting in the way. It's going to happen. All those boxes are going to show up at our doorstep. We're going to ship everybody's orders, and we're going to be back to our 4-day delivery time. That's a normal way that we ship. Everybody in the country is in the same place. You can't get it anywhere, and we're first in line. I had some people this week. I love them to death, but they said, I want a refund. I've waited long enough. Well, fine. So I refunded their money. Guess what happened? Today, product arrived. I would have shipped their order today, but instead I refunded their money because they weren't willing to wait. I try to explain to everybody, if you have friends that have ordered through my website, please tell them we're going to get through this, but we're all in this together. I can refund everybody's money. I'm happy to do it. I will sell more. No problem. But why don't you just wait? Why don't you just wait for the product to arrive? That's all I'm asking. The other thing that you need to be aware of, besides these 4 wonderful products, is True Niagen. If I can get my mouse to behave itself. Come on. Yeah, there we go. Back up. Wow. Okay, True Niagen. Everybody knows what NAD is. You've heard about it on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and X. Everybody's talking about NAD this, NAD that. Why? Because NAD is the molecule, the compound your body makes, which allows you to increase the number of mitochondria in your muscles and process ATP. ATP is the engine that drives the human body. You don't run on anything else. Sugar turned into ATP. Protein turned into ATP. But if you don't have the mitochondria to process it, you're sluggish. Now, everything was fine until you were 45 years old. Trust me. But at 45, you slowed way down in your NAD production. And guess what? You slowed down with it. Your telomeres started burning down on your chromosomes, and the number of mitochondria in your muscles began to fall off severely. And it's called aging. and you started to wrinkle up and you started to stop running and working out and having sex, and all those things went away. True Niagen tells your body how to make its own NAD again, the natural way. And once you make that NAD, you will never go back. I've been taking it since 2018. It's now 2026, 8 years, and I have not aged a day. In fact, I could honestly say physically, facially, everything, I've reverse aged in that 8 years. And honestly, Earth Explorers, we don't know where this goes. It hasn't been on the market any more than 8 years. So we don't know where it goes. What happens in 16 years? What happens in 80 years? We don't know. We don't have any data. But if I feel this good at 71, I think I'm going to feel just as good at 81 and 91. I see myself living another 30, maybe 40 years with good quality of life. You know what I was doing today? Laying flooring. How many 71-year-olds do you know are laying flooring? Nobody. They're watching videos of people lay flooring. Why? Because they don't have any NAD in their system. That's what I'm talking about. Get it done, people. And don't forget your zinc. I know you're forgetting the zinc because I'm not seeing any orders through my Amazon market. Zinc, magnesium, and vitamin B complex. This is the Mac Daddy of zinc. We call it Zima. All the athletes take it. All my friends take it. I take it. I work out with this stuff. It's amazing. It helps you stay healthy. It helps you stay strong. It helps you sleep better. Everything. And Insulis. Now, Abetu made a change. They were forced to move away from Shopify. Everybody is, because Shopify is bloody expensive as hell. It's a great platform, but nobody's making any money on it because Shopify is taking all the money. So everybody's moving away from it. And so did Abetu, the company that makes Insulis. I take it, and my back office has moved away from Shopify as well. So new link this week. A new link is going up on the website and in my newsletter so that we can track all that. Still a great product, still a great price. One bottle lasts about 2.5 months. I do it twice a day. Put 5, you saw me do it during the break or right before we started. It knocks my A1C numbers down, keeps my doctor happy, and lets my body use the insulin I already make. All right. And stop using fluoridated toothpaste. Just switch, okay? All right, let's get back to it because we got stuff we have to talk about. I wanted to touch this AOC story just a little bit more. She's going to be 40 pretty soon. I think her days of motherhood are pretty much over. This is all just IVF campaigning to make herself, look more, I don't know, more down to earth. Like, okay, now I want to be a mother. After I've been a millionaire and I went from being a bartender, a call girl, and now I've used my sexual favors up. I'm fat. I'm getting fatter every day, and now I have to start thinking about the things that are really important, like being president. And you can't be president when you're childless. It just ain't going to happen. So she's in trouble. The healthiness of male sperm and its connection to mental defects in children found that offspring risks begin to emerge by a paternal age of 40 years and are formidable by a paternal age of 50 years. For example, the study found that the risks of bipolar disease increases considerably in children fathered by a man in his 40s to 50s. An increasingly common tactic AOC may utilize to prevent adverse effects on her potential future child is hiring, as I said, a surrogate to carry her frozen embryo and using a younger man's sperm, or simply buying an embryonic child and using a surrogate. Either option exposes the modern dystopian world of fertility. A better and much more historically consistent option for modern women is to reject the AOST lifestyle and have the kids when the female and male bodies are primed for it. When you're 17 or 18 or 21 or 22, right? Peak female fertility is in the early 20s. And the same is true of men. Before IVF and fourth wave feminism, having children around that time was the norm. The change to childbearing in one's 30s is relatively recent. A CDC article found that in 1990, women less than 30 accounted for only 70% of births. But in 2023, they accounted for less than half. So the CDC also found that as women start having children later, fertility rates plummet. American families hit the replacement rate of 2.1 children per family in 1990. The U.S. birth rate in 2023 was 1.62. We're shrinking. By the way, it dropped to 1.59 in 2024. In 2025, Emma Waters, a senior policy and analyst at the Heritage Center, she published an article addressing the fertility crisis. So did I. There is no single reason for declining birth rates, so no single solution will reverse them. Well, it could be because the main reason is men are ugly. Men are ugly. Women are not going to have kids with ugly men. But you need to use your heads, women. Listen. I'm going to ask a question here. You're going to be offended by it, but I don't care. What is your body count? By the time a woman is 25 years old, if she is a 6 or better, you know what I'm talking about, a 6 or better, a 7, an 8, a 9, or 10, a woman in her age 25 has over 100 bodies under her belt, literally speaking. She's had sex with 100 different men. That's not common, but it is indicative of where women are with this. They treat men as objects, just like men treated women as objects. But in times past, 50s, 60s, 70s, and even the 80s, what would happen is a man would go to college, get his degree, graduate, get his law degree or his doctorate or whatever, start his career, and then he would go looking for a wife. Well, he's 27, he's 28. Where does he go looking for a wife? High school. They go dating 17, 18, 19-year-olds. Why? Because they're breedable and because their body count is maybe 1 or maybe 2, not 100 like the average 25-year-old. Trust me, go to any dating service you want. I don't care. I don't know the names of them, but go to any dating sites you want and look at the women that are on there looking for men. I dare you to ask them what their body count is. I dare you. Oh, I'm a proud mom, no drama, blah, blah, blah. You hear it all the time. Who goes on there more than anybody else? Men. Why? Because they're looking at the women. And these women aren't real. They're most of them AI generated. The point I'm trying to make is we've lost the art of familyhood, family centered life in this country. You see it at church. You might see it at the beach, but see, church is not what it used to be either. Years and years ago, you went to church because it was the right thing to do. You took your kids there, you introduced them to Jesus, they go to Sunday school, they do Easter egg hunts on Easter Sunday. The church is part of your social life, and it gives your kids a healthy view of the value of chastity. But that's gone away. A smaller and smaller number of people go to church, and a smaller and smaller number of women especially value chastity. I will say this straight up. Women are hit on at least 50 times more than men are hit on. They just are. They just are. Men don't get hit on that often, but a good-looking woman is going to get hit on 5 times a day, every single day. And all it takes is a moment of weakness. One moment of weakness. One moment when she can't make her rent. One moment when she is sick and tired of her man and she wants something else. There's always a next guy in line. A beautiful woman, a man needs to realize you're never hers. You're just the next person. You're just next. That's it. Men, it's the other way around. Men get hurt by a woman, they'll go celibate for a long time. They'll pour themselves into work, into school. They won't date for years. Not so with women. Not so. All right, let's talk about the CCP election spies. What is a good weapon when your enemy is sitting in the next seat to the pilot? Advanced sea drones provided by a tech company also contracted to the United States military contain Chinese components sending data from Britain back to Beijing. No kidding. Evidently, we learned nothing from the theft of America's most advanced stealth drone, the RQ-170, by Iranian forces utilizing Chinese backdoor firmware. The UK Ministry of Defense was forced to issue denials after claims emerged that the country's new generation of sea drones, these are uncrewed sea vessels, contained cameras built with Chinese components which were sending data home without the knowledge of the military or the company that built them. It's true. A source within the military blew the whistle on Chinese components built into scout drones communicating with an internet protocol address inside China. This is a major failure to check origins of components, and we have lost confidence in the platform. We had to know everything. We had to know where our screws came from, where our solder came from. Absolutely had to know where our chips came from anytime we were building a government component. Per the report, the components were installed inside a camera system fitted to K-3 Scout drones, which the Navy says can be used for surveillance, force protection, and precision strikes. It was acquired by the Royal Navy as part of a 12 million pound contract. Yes, that's right, pound contract, as the British military experiments with emerging drone technology. The K-3 is built by UK-based Kraken Technology, which has also boasted of a $49 million agreement with the United States Special Operations Command. Respected defense blog Navy Lookout notes that the K-3 is fitted with a Night Navigator 3000 series electro-optical infrared camera system, which is mounted prominently on the top of the drone's boat superstructure to give remote operations a clear view around the craft. That gimbaled camera assembly is made by Canadian tech company Current Scientific Corporation. But even though it's made in Canada, it isn't clear that this is definitely the system impacted by Chinese components, as the craft may have more than one camera fitted. Former Royal Navy Admiral and Falklands War veteran known for sinking an Argentinian submarine in 1982, Chris Perry, reflected on the revelations and said that, in his view, accidentally allowing internet-connected Chinese components into a Royal Navy boat could mean a major fine for the supplier and a ban from competing for future contracts. Oh, no kidding. The Ministry of Defense moved fast to control the story, issued a statement that didn't deny their new Scout drone had been transmitting data to China, but did insist that nothing of importance had been sent to Beijing. How do they know? Well, they probably haven't done anything important with the drone. That's why. The first duty of government is national security. We take the security of our equipment networks and data extremely seriously. I'll bet. Release the Kraken has a totally different meaning here. We are aware that some third-party NDAA-compliant cameras had a small number of components originating from outside the UK. After a full audit by both Kraken and the Royal Navy, we are confident no sensitive information has ever been shared, blah, 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 blah. The vulnerabilities of technology to Chinese components potentially inserting backdoors for foreign intelligence into equipment are well understood in the United Kingdom. And yet it appears in the case of these seagoing scout drones, they were accepted into service earlier this year without a full understanding of what was inside. How about that? Yeah, I don't think anybody's going to be fired over this one. In another story about what you voted for in 2024, federal immigration authorities have posted back-to-back record months for arrests of illegal aliens, and he expects the numbers to climb even higher as the administration adds agents and expands enforcement operations. June was the highest month in the history of the agency. They broke another record in July, and they're going to break another record in August. ICE data showed 43,138 arrests in June, surpassing the previous monthly high of Trump's second term. But I got to tell you, Earth Explorers, this is not enough. 43,000 people a month? Do the math, people. That's about 6 million or 600,000 people a year. It's not close. We need to raise this to 6 million a year, not 600,000. 6 million a year. That means we need 10,000 people a day. 10,000 people a day need to be arrested and deported. Homan rejected claims from some Trump supporters that the administration has scaled back its deportation effort. That is not so. It's not growing fast enough for me. Eisenhower deported 3 million in 90 days. 3 million in 90 days. That was Eisenhower. First, he just dumped them over the border and they came right back. They showed right back up at the farms and factories and everything where they were. The second time he deported them, 3 million people in 90 days picked them up and took them way down in Mexico, past Mexico City. Never saw them again. You have to get serious about this. Also coming up, Election Day doesn't start until Labor Day. Election season doesn't start till Labor Day. Obviously, we're already undergoing primaries. Yes, the primaries. The reason that the election doesn't officially begin until Labor Day is because we have primaries all the way up to that date and a little beyond. And you have to have the primary to know who is going to be on the ballot, right? You can't just have a national election or a state election if you don't know who's going to be on the ballot, right? So you got to have the primary first. Makes sense, right? Makes sense. So what a state does for its own elections in primaries is their own business. If they want to let dead people vote, illegals vote, people in Pakistan vote remotely, they want to do that. There's really nothing anybody can do about it. That's a state election. When it comes to the national election, when it comes to the election that's going to affect the Congress, affect the Senate, not the primary vote, but the actual vote, things begin to change. President Donald Trump is being, I think he's letting the global syndicate paint him into a corner. They've tried to pass the Save America Act. 84% of Americans want the Save America Act passed. But the Senate parliamentarian, who is an unelected official, who decides on her own that it's going to take 60 votes to pass it, and we only have 53. We could pass it if it was normal legislation. We could pass it. We could do it as a reconciliation. We could do it as part of another bill, but that's all trickster stuff. We need to get the House parliamentarian out of the way. We need to have a standing filibuster instead of a zombie filibuster. But barring all that, and Trump has certainly put all those cards on the table, and none of them have played. He said, stranger things have happened when it was suggested by me that he could declare a national security emergency for elections for the national election infrastructure. I suggested it on national radio. He heard it, and it is working its way through his mind, I can tell you. During an interview that aired, when was this? Wayne Allen Root actually did it. He posed the idea of declaring a national security emergency for the midterm elections, which he said would allow for voter identification requirements at the ballot box. Wayne pointed to the 1983 Supreme Court ruling of Immigration and Naturalization Service versus Chadha as the reason the president would have the right to declare a national emergency. I made the statement about 4 months ago on national radio that the president should declare a national state of emergency based on national security reasons, that our election infrastructure has been attacked by an outside adversary, that the infrastructure has been compromised, and that all mail-in ballots should be banned until further notice. ID would be required to vote, and proof of citizenship would be required to register and vote. And you would vote in person with ID. Sounds easy enough, right? Because it's so hard to get the Senate to do anything. They're on recess. They don't get anything done. If they never get the Save America Act done, you have the right to declare a national security emergency for elections. And the Supreme Court ruled in 1983 under Reagan, INS versus Chadha, that if you declare a national security emergency, nobody can stand in your way. You have the right to do it in the Constitution, and no one can stop you. It can only be overturned by a 2/3 vote of both houses of Congress, which ain't happening. So if you do this in the next month, we will get photo ID, proof of citizenship, and a limit to mail-in ballots. And Trump's response in the interview was brief, but it makes sense. Let me just say that stranger things have happened, he said, okay? I'll leave it at that. The conversation comes after the U.S. Senate failed to pass the Save America Act. You all know what it requires. Because of the filibuster, 60 votes are needed, because it's a zombie filibuster, not an actual talking filibuster. President Trump's administration again asked the Supreme Court on Wednesday to intervene to fully implement his executive order, restricting the use of mail-in ballots instead ahead of the November midterm elections. The Justice Department filed a request asking the justices to put on hold a decision made on Tuesday by U.S. District Judge Indira Talwani in Boston that blocks the U.S. Postal Service from nationwide enforcement of the directive's tighter rules for voting by mail. I'm not really concerned about voting by mail. Voting by mail is a small potato. The big enchilada is the voting by drop box. You understand what I'm saying? Nobody's watching the drop box. Anybody can go up and stuff the ballot box anytime they want. At 2 o'clock in the morning, they can go shove 100 ballots in there. Nobody cares. Nobody's been arrested. You remember Dinesh D'Souza's movie, 2,000 Mules? Nobody went to jail. Nobody was arrested. Nobody was indicted. Nothing happened. Example after example after example. Hours of this documentary documented fraud on a massive scale across the nation. The Zucker boxes are not mailboxes. That's not the blue box with a stamp on it that has to go into the U.S. mail. People are very careful. They don't want to commit mail fraud, right? But you can commit drop box fraud. And if it doesn't make it into the drop box, no problem. Print up the ballot after you know what the results of the election are. Print up the ballot 5 days after the election. How many do you need? 100? You need 600? You need 900? You need 12,000? No problem. We'll print them up, already pre-voted, with all the voter information on there, straight off the printer, and we'll deliver them. Give us 3 or 4 days, and then you can count those and you'll win the election. It's not the mail-in ballots. It's the drop box ballots that are the big problem. Anyway, this U.S. Attorney Talwani's decision, it was a case brought by several voting rights groups and represented by the American Civil Liberties Union, effectively expands on an earlier report she issued in June preventing the enforcement of Trump's order in 23 mostly Democrat-governed states and Washington, D.C., which had also challenged the action as unconstitutional. The administration has already asked the Supreme Court to pause the June decision. In its brief filed today, the Justice Department urged the Supreme Court to lift that decision and make clear that the ruling applies to the judge's actions on Tuesday as well. The administration contends that the lawsuits are premature, as federal agencies have not yet taken any concrete actions that impact the plaintiffs, and so any harm they allege is speculative. It also required the Postal Service to deliver ballots only to voters on each state's approved mail-in ballot list. Postal Service recently moved to implement Trump's directive. In siding with the voting rights groups on Tuesday, Talwani wrote that the executive branch of the federal government had no authority to regulate elections, a responsibility that the U.S. Constitution assigns to individual states. But the issue is, of course, that very election infrastructure has been attacked. It has been compromised and attacked by a foreign adversary. So the president has the right to step in and say, this has been compromised by a foreign adversary. And so we're going to take federal control of it, and we're going to make sure that this election has integrity. Something else Trump is doing, we've talked last week about the deal that was made between Oman and Iran. Oman controls one side of the Strait of Hormuz. Iran controls the other side of the Strait of Hormuz. One direction, they send the ships close to Iran and they collect a fee. And the other direction, they send the ships close to Oman and they collect a fee. And that's the way they want it to be. And by the way, they also required the U.S. Navy to vacate the area, lift the blockade, and you might as well free up our funds while you're at it. That doesn't sound like unconditional surrender to me. So today, on Truth Social, Trump issues a familiar refrain claiming that the U.S. has total control over the Strait of Hormuz, and I think we will keep it. It's also yet more confirmation that he is opting for economic siege warfare as the U.S. military campaign is on halt. He also did his bizarre praise be to Allah sign-off. Iran's military leadership is claiming victory is on our side. That does not sound like unconditional surrender to me. Does it to you? It has become beyond obvious now to the most casual observer that there is no broader peace process and that things are in a stalemated situation amid what's broadly seen as a Washington retreat from military confrontation, leaving Iran to press its own vision of management over the Strait of Hormuz with Oman, as I warned you they would do 2 weeks ago. While President Trump has settled into a waiting game, which one again bets on sanctions and economic warfare to eventually force Tehran to bend, they're not going to. And I think the waiting game is dangerous, because what are you waiting for? You waiting for them to shoot another ship? You waiting for them to sink a ship and kill the whole crew? What are you waiting for? Wall Street Journal noted that the Islamic Republic has entered a survival economy, with the country's rulers taking time-tested steps to keep their chronically battered economy functioning just enough to resist a drawn-out campaign. There's no doubt that the infrastructure, along with various key industries and the Iranian currency, has been severely tested and battered. But Tehran is rationing scarce goods. They're limiting access to foreign currency. They're slashing investment and shifting more of the burden onto households, while preserving strategic imports and the essential machinery of the state. The result will be a deepening economic malaise that leads to rising poverty and dysfunction. But I've already mentioned that Trump could solve this problem and save the day for Persians. If you're listening, President Trump, or your advisors, obviously you're listening because you're doing the suggestions that I said 2 weeks ago, 1 week ago. So listen very closely. You need to set up a Trump bank. Call it a Trump bank, call it whatever you want. I'm calling it a Trump bank. You need to set up a Trump bank. And you need to put the revenue from the Iranian sale of oil and whatever else you can throw in there, like the sanctions money maybe, put it in the bank. Put it in the bank. And then encourage Persians to open an account in that bank. Encourage the Persian people, their businesses, to open accounts in that bank. And then transfer money from the Trump fund into those individual accounts. Call it stimulus funds. $1,000 a month, $2,000 a month, $5,000 a month, into those accounts from the sale of the Iranian oil. Don't let the money go to the IRGC. Don't let the mullahs and the radical Islamic leaders of Iran get their hands on the money. Transfer it into enterprise zones deep in the country. And what will happen is the people will worship you, because they'll be able to buy groceries. They'll be able to buy gas and inventory for their little shops. And the IRGC can't do anything about it because the country is enormous. We're talking 69 million people. The IRGC is less than 5% of the population. 5%. 69 million people would have access to that money. And the long-term benefits would be unbelievable. Once you create not a military divide, don't give them weapons and make them go out on the street and fight trained soldiers. They're going to die. Let them fight an economic war with their own money that you gave them through the Trump Bank. You know it would work. I'm telling you it would work. There's no way the IRGC could confiscate the money. The Trump strategy is resting on a risky assumption that Iran will crack before Washington does. I don't believe that. I don't think they will. Why? Because they're psychopaths. They're religious fanatic psychopaths. And a psychopath does not have a grip on reality. They have no remorse. They don't think they're doing anything wrong. In fact, they don't have a sense of right and wrong, of good and evil. To them, everything that's not them is of Satan. You can't win against the people like that. The only thing you can do is go around them, go directly to the Persian people, and let them do business directly. That's how you got to do it. I don't care. Call it Operation Trump Bank. Take the name. I give it to you. It's fine. Gulf and regional mediators are still clinging to hope that some form of ceasefire can limp along and be put back into full force. It's not going to work. It's not going to work because the Houthis attacked again today. The Iranian-supported Houthis attacked a ship again today, launched missiles at it. Pakistan said the 60-day deadline for U.S.-Iran Memorandum of Understanding may be extended. No, it won't be. That's bullshit. Why do that? You have the Memorandum of Understanding with the wrong people. Neither of these things are true. At this point, the MOU is dead. Iran already pulled out while declaring in null. Also, if the U.S. military totally controlled the strait, then there would be no crisis that must be resolved, right? Ships be sailing like crazy, but they're not. There's absolutely no progress. I see it, you see it, the world sees it. There's no progress. Yeah, call it Operation My Money Now, suckers. Very good, Blue Max. Let it go to the Persian people directly. It's their oil. Let it sell, take the money, and put it in the Trump bank and disperse it to the Persian people. Create enterprise zones, massive enterprise zones inside of Persia. The only thing the IRGC could do is go door to door and force people to go to the ATM and withdraw the money. Obviously, that's not going to happen. Not going to happen. All right. Trump signed an executive order today titled Delivering Gold Standard Childhood Vaccine Recommendations for Americans. I like it because North Carolina has a devastatingly severe vaccine schedule. I have 2 grandkids right over there, just right outside my window here. I don't want them to take any more vaccines. The school system will not let my grandkids go to school unless they take more vaccines. Thank God Trump had the balls to sign this executive order. Now, North Carolina, about an hour after Trump signed this executive order, said they have no intention of changing their vaccine schedule requirements for school kids. Yeah, well, he says for too long, America has recommended more childhood vaccines than any peer nation, including more than twice as many vaccine doses as some European countries. The president went on to state that the normal sequence for vaccinating infants is deeply flawed. In many cases, we are requiring 72 jabs for our beautiful, healthy, lovely, delicate little children, including giving the hepatitis B shots to infants and newborns on top of many other vaccines. The executive order differs from a previous presidential memorandum issued on December 5th, 2025, which initiated vaccine research, and from an executive order issued on May 29, 2026, that reaffirmed the administration's policy to support maximal parental choice over the childhood vaccines. In contrast, this executive order, now listen to this, publicizes initial findings to the American public and recommends 11 core vaccines. That's it, 11, not 72. Big difference. MMR vaccine. However, the administration advises that MMR doses be given as 3 separate shots on 3 different times. Trump reported research claiming together there could be a possibility that the MMR vaccines are quite lethal, and separately, it looks like they are not at all lethal, but very effective. Occasionally, the order requires the Secretary of HHS to present plans to the president on options for administering the core vaccines, the optimal sequence for child vaccinations, and the benefit and risk profiles of specific vaccines, all within 90 days of this order signing. The order also requires the Attorney General to continue to take appropriate measures to further meritorious legal actions. This is going to empower parents to sue the state if the parents decide that they're not going to get their kids vaccinated. And they're going to send him to school anyway. And the school says, I'm sorry, but your kid's not stepping in this classroom until he gets all his shots. Parents are now authorized by this executive order to sue the state, and they're going to win. Administration officials maintain this executive order is not centered on anti-vaccine propaganda, but rather on allowing American parents the freedom and the space to choose what is right for their children. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said the executive order and HHS research efforts around the vaccines seek to preserve access to vaccines, strengthen safety monitoring, expand research, give doctors and parents better information, and restore informed consent and parental choice to their rightful place in American medicine. I think it's serious, people. I think the state should be shaking in their boots right now. We have 14.5 million-ish people in North Carolina, and autism is at an all-time high. And autism and vaccine schedules are tightly associated with one another. I know. You could say, oh, come on, study after study after study has been done. Bullshit. The studies have been done on twins. The studies have been done on triplets. And what they found is when these triplets and twins go in for their vaccinations, they're perfectly healthy, happy kids when they go in, and an hour later, they are listless and no longer communicating. There's a cause and effect. You could say, oh, it wasn't the vaccine. It was the vaccine. It was the vaccine. The kid's a year and a half old. It doesn't know I got a shot and so I'm not talking anymore. It doesn't make that decision consciously. It loses the ability to think because of the vaccine. To watch triplets, the pride of your life, the most valuable thing in the universe to you, go into the doctor's office perfectly healthy and come out with a blank stare like their soul has been ripped out of their body. It's not a traumatic experience to get a shot. It's the chemicals in the shot that is stripping them of their personality. I have friends, quite a few friends, their kids have had 0 vaccinations, none. Of course, they don't go to public school. They're either homeschooled or they go to private school, but they're not in public schools. For that reason. Norma Coe says, my grandmother, a doctor, kept me and my siblings from all vaccines. You know Robert F. Kennedy, right? You've heard him speak, that pattern of speech that he has. It's difficult to listen to. You know what gave him that speech pattern? The polio vaccine. The polio vaccine gave him that. He's had it his entire life since he got the polio vaccine. Yeah. Norma says, my mom developed polio a week after getting the polio vaccine. Exactly right. It affected all kinds of people differently. He has said the executive order and HHS research efforts around vaccines seek to preserve access to vaccines, strengthen safety monitoring, because right now they don't, because if it reports something like a VAERS, a abnormal response to the vaccine, they don't want anybody to know about it. It goes into a secret database and it's not publicized. They want to expand the research. They want to give doctors and parents better information. And they want to restore informed consent and parental choice. There has to be parental choice. Because there's no way that my unvaccinated grandkid is going to put at risk your vaccinated kid. Not going to happen. It makes no logical sense whatsoever. You're just saying, well, that's not fair. My kid got the shot. Your kid should get the shot. No, that's bullshit. I don't care if it's fair or not. Your kid got a shot, my kid has to get a shot. Not so. My kid's not getting the shot. And we'll fight it out. I'll see you in court. I'll see you in court. And you know what? I have friends everywhere, just like my hat says. I have friends everywhere. And there you go, Brown Tail. I could not have said it better. You said it perfect in the chat room. The Amish are the best control group. Hardly any autism. None that I know of. None that I know of. Yeah, most scientists will say what their employer says to put in the study. Right. It's not follow the science, is it, Blue Max? It's follow the money. Follow the damn money. Right on. Well, listen, it's Wednesday night. We've had a spirited program tonight. We have 82 days until Labor Day, and then the election gets serious. It starts to affect everybody. If you're not registered to vote, and I think there are a lot of people out there that go to church, don't vote. A lot of people are out there that hunt. You have guns. You're obviously pro-Second Amendment. You don't vote. You also don't give a rat's ass about midterm elections. But I'm telling you, if you're a listener to America Free Radio and you're not registered to vote, I'm coming to your house. We're going to get you registered and you're going to vote. Now, I don't care which way you vote as long as you don't vote Democrat. I'm straight up about it, man. I want to vote for America. I want to vote for America. This is America against the global syndicate. And right now, the Democrat Party and the DSA, the Democrat Socialists of America, are the political party of the global syndicate. They want to destroy this country. I want to save this country. In order to save this country, you have to get out and vote, and every vote counts. If you're a sit-home, I don't vote in midterms person, change your mind, because it's very important that we win this and we win it big. We're going to continue to put pressure on the way money is raised and spent in elections. That's why the Democrat Socialists of America are making the headway that they are, because the money that normally goes to pay for these down ballot elections, because these guys don't campaign. They don't know shit about campaigning. Campaigning's all done for them. Voting's already done for them, like Karen Bass and people like that. It's already figured out. The votes are already sitting in a warehouse somewhere. They just need to be shipped to the counting station. They don't care. They'll cheat straight up. But there is a way to beat it, and the way to beat it is to vote. Okay? Yeah. Yeah, the military-industrial complex, which is kind of the same thing. All right, people. Thanks for the great interactivity with the chat. Don't forget, in a couple of weeks, we're going to be adding amoxicillin, zithromax, and cephalexin. These are antibiotics. You can stock your medicine cabinet with them. You will not need a prescription. Super high quality stuff. We do have bacterial infections coming down the coast. We don't know what the winter is going to be like. I'm going to stock the stuff and make it available to you. So take advantage of that, okay? Yes, we're having trouble with HHS because Big Pharma is pressuring the Food and Drug Administration to take everything we've bought that's for you. But they're not going to succeed. As soon as this U.S.-India tariff settles, which may have happened today, all that stuff's going to arrive. We're going to ship everybody's orders, and we're going to be back to 4-day delivery. Go out and look for the good in others and help it to grow a little bit every day, and before long, you will have saved the planet. That's how we do it. That's how we save the planet. All right? Peace, Earth Explorers. Now go and do great things. And we will see you on Sunday night. Don't forget, we'll be on Agent X11 tomorrow afternoon as well. Be good to one another. See ya.